Spring is on the way, and we cannot let this spring break ruin all the work we've done in the past few months. So follow local public health directives, avoid gatherings. Now's not the time to get together with many families within the same home or chalet. And with the new variants, we can't take any risks. We want spring and summer to be better, so please be careful.
Canada received a total of 643,000 doses of the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines. This is our largest week of shipments to date. Vaccines will keep arriving faster and faster as we head into the spring. And not just because shipments of Moderna and Pfizer are ramping up, which they are, but because Canada has now approved yet another vaccine option. This morning, Health Canada authorized the AstraZeneca Oxford COVID-19 vaccine, as well as the Serum Institute of India's version, Covishield, which is sponsored in Canada by Mississauga's Verity Pharmaceuticals. In other words, we now have a third safe and effective vaccine independently approved by health experts in Canada. This is very encouraging news. It means more people vaccinated and sooner, because for AstraZeneca, like we were for Pfizer and Moderna, we're ready to get doses rolling. Canada has secured 2 million doses of the Covishield vaccine through an agreement with Verity Pharmaceuticals and the Serum Institute of India. With the vaccine now approved in Canada, our first shipment of 500,000 of these doses will arrive within weeks. The remaining doses are scheduled for delivery over the next couple of months. These 2 million doses are in addition to the 20 million doses we've already secured with AstraZeneca that will start arriving in the spring, and any AstraZeneca doses that Canada receives from COVAX will be added to that total. So there are a lot of numbers out there. Here's the bottom line. With Pfizer, Moderna, and now AstraZeneca, Canada will get to more than 6.5 million doses by the end of March. And there will be tens of millions more doses to come between April and June. I want to express my appreciation for the support and partnership of the Indian government in fighting COVID-19 and helping secure these doses for Canadians. I also want to thank Minister Anand and our teams at Public Services and Procurement Canada and Global Affairs Canada for their outstanding work on this file, both here and in India. Ce matin, Santé.
This morning, Health Canada authorized AstraZeneca's vaccine, which was developed in partnership with Oxford University, and that's very good news. Today, I can announce that Canada has signed an agreement with Verity Pharmaceuticals and the Serum Institute of India to receive 2 million doses of the Covishield vaccine, which is based on the AstraZeneca vaccine. And I can confirm that we will receive 500,000 doses under this agreement in the coming weeks, and the rest will arrive in the spring. These 2 million doses come on top of the 20 million doses we've already reserved with AstraZeneca and the other doses which Canada will receive through the COVAX initiative. So, in short, between now and the end of March, including Pfizer, Moderna, and AstraZeneca, Canada will receive a total over 6.5 million doses of vaccines against COVID-19, and tens of millions of others will follow in April and June.
Are on everyone's mind right now. You're looking forward to you and your loved ones getting your shot. We're working around the clock to make sure that happens as soon as possible. Deliveries are ramping up. We've got incredible people right across the country working as one big team towards the same goal. Just take Brianna from Kamloops. Brianna is a frontline nurse who sent me an email recently, and I'm glad she did. Because to you, Brianna, and to all the nurses, doctors, and healthcare staff out there, I want to say this. Thank you. Every day, you're making sure that your fellow Canadians get tested, get vaccinated, and stay safe. You are our heroes. As vaccinations ramp up across the country, many provinces have expanded the number of health professionals able to administer the COVID-19 vaccine. If you're a dentist, a paramedic, a midwife, a pharmacy technician, or a retired nurse, we need your help. And people like Brianna need your help too. Together, we will make sure that every Canadian who wants it will be vaccinated by September.
Now I'd like to continue with another piece of good news. Last June, a research and development company in Quebec, FP Innovations, which finds solutions for the forestry sector in Canada, set itself a goal, namely to develop a compostable face mask. And in partnership with Natural Resources Canada, they've now developed one of the first non-medical compostable face masks in the world. They are made by Canadian producers using Canadian wood fiber. Thank you so much to those involved for your leadership, and good luck with your next challenge, which is to develop a grade 1 medical mask, which is completely biodegradable. It's by continuing to work together and to use our know-how that together we will get through this crisis. And in fact, talking of working together, we've had a very productive and positive week with regard to our relationship with the United States.
An ambitious and comprehensive roadmap for renewing the partnership between Canada and the United States. We got straight to work. On Tuesday, Deputy Prime Minister Freeland, Minister Garneau, and I had a very productive meeting with President Biden and Vice President Harris. It was great to see that we're on the same page when it comes to so many of the challenges our world is facing, whether that's ending COVID-19 or rebuilding our economies in a way that supports the middle class and creates good jobs. We're on the same page, too, when it comes to fighting climate change and working together to build a more peaceful and prosperous world. Of course, our collaboration with the new administration didn't end with the meeting we had on Tuesday. On Wednesday, Minister Wilkinson had a meeting with Special Envoy for Climate, John Kerry. Yesterday, Minister Alhabra and Transportation Secretary Buttigieg released a joint statement on how our country's transportation sectors will tackle climate change together. And today, Minister Garneau and I will meet with Secretary of State Blinken to discuss defending human rights around the world, among other things. As partners, allies, and friends, I know we're going to work together to make life better for people on both sides of the border. Right now, job one remains beating this pandemic. We still have to be very careful, especially with new variants out there. We all want to start the spring in the best shape possible. That's why rapid testing continues to be an important part of our strategy to fight this virus. On that front, we're going to keep sending rapid tests to the provinces and territories while we also work with the private sector to get more Canadians tested. And finally, I want to end this morning by recognizing that today is the Lantern Festival, which marks the end of Lunar New Year. Just like with Black History Month, which ends this Sunday, celebrations were different this year. But what will never change is the fact that year-round Canada is stronger because of the incredible contributions of Asian Canadians, of Black Canadians, and of everyone who calls this country home. Now, more than ever, as we face these tough times, we need to come together and stand strong and united. Last week, the Vancouver Police Department released data that shows that anti-Asian crimes in the city rose by more than 700% in 2020. Too many other cities have also reported significant increases of these hateful crimes, including here in Ottawa. And in Edmonton, there's been a recent series of appalling attacks targeting Black, racialized, and Muslim women. To the victims, we stand with you. There is no place for this in Canada. These acts are unacceptable, and they have to stop. Ce sont des moments difficiles.
These are difficult moments, but we have to keep on helping each other and working together now and in the future. Thank you to everyone. I will now give the floor to Minister Anand. Anita.
Thank you, Prime Minister, and good morning, everyone. We have seen a record number of COVID-19 vaccines coming into this country over the past week. And this will continue over the next weeks and months as we continue to see millions of vaccines coming into this country. We have continually said that when a vaccine is ready, Canada will be ready. And today's announcement that Health Canada has approved the AstraZeneca vaccine is testament to our strategy of diversification. In other words, we pursued advanced purchase agreements with 7 leading vaccine manufacturers to place Canadians in the best stead possible. Once a vaccine was approved by Health Canada, we wanted to make sure that every Canadian had access to a vaccine. And our strategy of diversification continues to see results. As the Prime Minister just announced, Canada has secured 2 million doses of the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine through an agreement with Verity Pharmaceuticals and the Serum Institute of India, in collaboration with AstraZeneca Canada. Following this morning's announcement that the vaccine has been approved by Health Canada, I am pleased to confirm that the first batch of doses, consisting of 500,000 doses, will be delivered to Canada in the coming days, and they will then be distributed to the provinces and territories. The remaining 1.5 million doses are expected to arrive in the coming months. Je suis heureuse de confirmer.
I am pleased to confirm, following approval by Health Canada this morning, that the 500,000 first doses of AstraZeneca will arrive in the coming days and will be quickly ready to be administered by the provinces and territories, and the remaining 1.5 million doses should arrive within the scheduled deadline in the course of the spring.
Are in addition to the 20 million doses already secured through an earlier agreement with AstraZeneca. We expect to start receiving those doses in the second quarter, and today's Health Canada regulatory approval will allow us now to firm up the delivery schedule, which we will share with you as soon as it is confirmed. Avec les annonces d'aujourd'hui,
with today's announcements, I would like to reaffirm that we will be able to provide, by the end of September, a vaccine to every Canadian for whom it is recommended to receive a vaccine against COVID-19.
Continue to leave no stone unturned to bring as many vaccines as possible into Canada as quickly as possible. We know that with the rollout of vaccines, the ongoing use of rapid tests, and following public health measures, we can combat this virus once and for all. Today's announcement that AstraZeneca vaccines will be arriving now that they have been approved by Health Canada is good news for Canadians. Thank you. Merci, Miigwech.
Mr. Hajdu?
Thank you very much, and thanks, Prime Minister and team, for great news today. And of course, this means we now have 3 approved vaccines in Canada: Pfizer, Moderna, and now AstraZeneca. And a new vaccine means there are more options for Canadians. And obviously, this is exciting news for all Canadians who are waiting their turn to get vaccinated. I will also say that while we wait our turn, it's important to remember that we do need to continue to protect ourselves, our loved ones, and our communities. So that means the things that we've been doing for so long: washing our hands, staying physically distanced, staying home when we're sick, reaching out for a test, even if we're slightly worried about our condition, slight fever, a slight cough, call public health. Please ask to get tested. Make sure that we know that we're protecting our families and our communities. I also want to thank all of the travelers who are complying with our new border and quarantine measures. Of course, these measures are in place to protect Canadians against variants of concern. It allows for our country to be able to analyze the virus as it enters our country as it shifts and changes, we are at a critical time in our fight with COVID-19. As we see new vaccines arrive, we want nothing to stop our progress. And so I want to thank Canadians who are complying with the quarantine measures, complying with the border screening measures. This will help protect our communities and will help us in our fight against COVID-19. These times are stressful. I know that. I know many people are worried. Despite the good news today, there continues to be anxiety in communities that are seeing cases rise. Please don't forget about taking care of yourself, your mental health, the mental health of your close ones. And I remind everyone about wellnesstogether.ca, a free resource that is open to all Canadians in both official languages with translation into 60 others. Don't hesitate to check out this resource online for support if you're needing it. It's a sign of strength to reach out for help. And I want to thank all Canadians in their resiliency and their strength. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tom.
Hi everyone. Bonjour à toutes et à tous.
Good morning to everyone.
Good morning. 58,217 cases of COVID-19 in Canada, including 21,865 deaths. Currently, there are 30,335 active cases across Canada. Over the past week, an average of 97,120 tests were completed daily, of which 3.2% were positive for COVID-19, and an average of 2,960 new cases and 52 deaths were reported daily. During the same period of time, 2,269 people with COVID-19 were being treated in their hospitals each day, including 564 in critical care. Although COVID-19 activity has been declining nationally for several weeks, we are keeping a close eye on increased case counts over the past few days. In particular, average daily case counts have increased, ranging from 8 to 14% higher in Ontario, British Columbia, and Alberta, as compared to last week. In addition, the number of cases involving the more contagious B.1.1.7 variant of concern continues to increase, with the highest numbers to date being reported from these same three provinces. To date, there have been 964 B.1.1.7, 44 B.1.351, and 2 P.1 variant cases reported across Canada. With daily case counts still elevated, almost 75 times higher than the peak of the first wave, and more contagious variants spreading, the risk of rapid reacceleration remains. At the same time, new variants continue to emerge, and those with an advantage, such as the ability to spread faster, can become predominant. Given a much narrower margin of error with these variants, controlling the epidemic will be much more difficult. This is why we must do our best to prevent spread now and avoid more illnesses and loss that would follow. I know we're all tired, but we are getting closer every day. Considering how far we have come, let's keep working together to achieve the successful outcome we've already worked so hard for. Our progress on the vaccine front continues to give us reason for optimism. To date, over 1.7 million doses of COVID-19 vaccine have been administered across Canada, and there are early indications of high vaccine effectiveness among some other populations at the highest risk of severe outcomes or exposure, who are being targeted by priority vaccination programs. As vaccine programs continue to roll out, federal, provincial, and territorial authorities are continuing to monitor vaccine safety. To date, as of February the 19th, there have been 1,235 reports of adverse events following immunization. These reports include any medical event that occurs following immunization, but is not necessarily related to the vaccine or the immunization process. A total of 167 of these reports to date, about 1 in 9,000 doses administered, were considered serious, such as severe allergic reactions. All adverse events are subject to review, and all serious events undergo a detailed investigation to determine whether or not they are related to the use of the vaccine. To date, no unexpected vaccine safety issues have been identified. As we continue to make progress, I urge Canadians to remain vigilant, continue to follow local public health advice, and consistently maintain individual practices that keep us and our families safer. We are stronger together, and together we are achieving great things. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tam.
Bonjour à toutes et à tous.
Hello to everyone. To date, there have been 858,217 cases of COVID in Canada, including 21,865 deaths. Currently, there are 30,335 active cases across Canada. Over the past week, an average of 97,120 tests were completed daily, of which 3.2% were positive for COVID-19, and an average of 2,960 new cases and 52 deaths were reported daily. During the same period, 2,269 people with COVID-19 were being treated in our hospitals each day, including 564 in critical care. Although COVID-19 activity has been declining nationally for several weeks, we're keeping a close eye on increased case counts over the past few days. In particular, average daily counts have increased, ranging from 8 to 14% higher in Ontario, British Columbia, and Alberta as compared to last week. In addition, the number of cases involving the more contagious B.1.1.7 variant of concern continues to increase, with the highest numbers to date being reported from these same three provinces. To date, there have been 964 B.1.1.7, 44 B.1.351, and 2 P.1 variant cases reported across Canada. With daily counts still elevated, almost 75% higher than the peak of the first wave, and more contagious variants spreading, the risk of rapid re-acceleration remains. At the same time, new variants continue to emerge, and those with an advantage, such as the ability to spread faster, can become predominant. Given a much narrower margin of error with these variants, controlling the epidemic would become much more difficult, and this is why we must do our best to prevent spread now and avoid more illness and loss that could follow. I know we're all tired, but we're getting closer every day. Considering how far we've come, let's keep working together to achieve the successful outcome that we've already worked so hard for. Our progress on the vaccine front continues to give us reason for optimism. To date, over 1.7 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines have been administered across Canada, and there are early indications of high vaccine effectiveness among some of the populations at highest risk of severe outcomes or exposure who are being targeted by priority vaccination programs. As vaccine programs continue to roll out, federal, provincial, and territorial authorities are continuing to monitor vaccine safety. To date, as of February 19th, there have been 1,235 reports of adverse events following immunization, and these reports include any medical event that occurs following immunization, but not necessarily related to the vaccine or the immunization process. A total of 167 of these reports to date, about 1 in 9,000 doses administered, were considered serious, such as, for instance, a severe allergic reaction. All adverse events are subject to review, and all serious events undergo a detailed investigation to determine whether or not they are related to the use of the vaccine. To date, no unexpected vaccine safety issues have been identified. As we continue to make progress, I urge Canadians to remain vigilant, to continue to follow local public health advice and consistently maintain individual practices that keeps us and our families safe. We're stronger together, and together we are achieving great things. Thank you.
Merci, Dr. Njoo. Le Premier ministre répondra à des...
Thank you, Dr. Njoo. The Prime Minister will take questions for 20 minutes. Doctors, ministers, and Major General Fortin will be here to answer your questions.
For 20 minutes, ministers, doctors, and Major General Fortin will remain available to answer more questions afterward. Starting with the phone today, one question, one follow-up. Opérateur, c'est à vous.
Thank you. Merci. Première question, Catherine Lévesque.
First question. Good morning, Mr. Trudeau. We've received numbers which show that Quebec has millions of rapid tests which will expire in April. Only a small fraction of those rapid tests have been given to schools or companies who have asked for them. What do you think of that situation? And will the federal government send more rapid tests to Quebec if they might be wasted? Answer, we're still working with the provinces and territories on the administration of rapid tests. We know that it'll be very important to use those tests in light of the new variants in order to keep Canadians safe. As lockdowns slowly come down. At the same time, we are working with the private sector to make sure that other options are out there for use of these rapid tests. We know that the rapid tests are a way to help keep us safe as spring comes closer. Dominic, is there anything you'd like to add on the work you've done with the provinces on rapid testing? Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. You're right. In the course of our discussions every 2 weeks, we did talk about the issue, and I know Minister Hajdu is speaking with her counterparts. Some governments have asked for more of these rapid tests, and some companies in certain sectors of the economy want to use more of them as well. So we are giving these tests to the provinces so they can use them. Follow-up question, Catherine? Yes. I'd like to come back to the vaccines. Many Canadians this week were enviously looking towards Great Britain, which was announcing the potential end of lockdowns and coming back to normal life. With the approval of AstraZeneca and other vaccines soon, do you think Canada could go back to normal life before the end of September? Answer. Well, we certainly hope to end the lockdowns and come back to normal life as quickly as possible, and that's why we are working every day to get more vaccines more quickly for Canadians. In light of today's good news, we will receive 6.5 million doses by the end of March and tens of millions of additional doses in April, May, and June. So we know that we've got the situation in hand, and the mass vaccination will roll out in the coming weeks and months. But when it comes to public health directives, several factors will have to be taken into account, including the rate of vaccination and the presence of these variants and outbreaks in certain areas, the percentages of people who are vulnerable. But Health Canada is keeping a close eye on the situation, so perhaps I can turn to Dr. Tam or Dr. Njoo for additional information on when we can start loosening the lockdowns.
Obviously, we all want to get back to a semblance of normality as quickly as possible. And that's why, as a government, we're working every single day to get more vaccines more quickly into the arms of Canadians. And it's good news that we have today that we can announce 6.5 million doses to be arriving by the end of next month, by the end of March, and tens of millions of doses scheduled to arrive at the very least in April, May, and June. So we're well on our way, but what actually that's going to mean in terms of loosening of public health rules will depend on many factors, including vaccination rates, but also the presence of variants, of a third wave, issues like that. And with that, I'm happy to turn to Drs. Tam or Njoo for comments on what we're looking at in terms of what those recommendations could be. Theresa?
Dr. Tam?
Sorry, the reception just getting a little bit slower on my end. But I actually would just echo what the Prime Minister has said. And that, of course, we would all want to get to a spot where there's less of those more restrictive measures. There are a number of ways to do that.
Theresa, your sound is really not coming through well. Perhaps we can see if Howard's sound is better.
And secondly, may I just check to see if my line is still okay?
Yeah. Yes, it's Dr. Njoo. I'll answer in English and maybe also in French. Certainly, not much to add to the Prime Minister's answer. I think it was very complete. The fact is that certainly with the introduction of another vaccine to our portfolio of vaccines, that's very important. But there are other factors to consider as well, the emergence of variants. And of course, with our public health measures, I don't think we can just rely on the vaccines alone to be the silver bullet. People need to understand that we need to keep the public health measures in place with respect to at least personal behaviors. I think that's very important that people recognize that we need to keep at it in terms of practicing good personal behaviors. Certainly, the public health measures at a population level, there is, I think, obviously in the different provinces and territories, a starting of loosening, but I think that has to be tied very closely to a good surveillance, watching what the situation is, looking at the indicators, and certainly if there's any indication that the case rates and certainly the emergence of variants are increasing, that we would need to adjust as appropriate. But the vaccinations, and I think certainly the introduction of vaccines and more vaccines coming to Canada is very, very good news. C'est parce que je dois répéter en français, ça marche, je pense.
I will repeat that answer in French. I think that vaccines are very important, of course, but we just cannot let our guard down when it comes to public health measures and personal behaviors. With March break in Quebec, it's really important to keep on engaging in good individual public health practices. Vaccinations are not a silver bullet. And with the arrival of these new variants, well, that's a concern. We're keeping a close eye on them. But there's no doubt we have to keep on practicing good individual behavior. However, today there's a lot of good news with the approval of the third vaccine in Canada.
Back to the phone. Opérateur, prochaine question au téléphone.
Thank you. Merci. Next question, Ryan Penalty, The National Post. Line open.
Yeah, good afternoon, sir. I'm wondering with the AstraZeneca vaccine, I understand a big majority of our shipment, the 20 million shipment, is coming from the U.S. Did you get some assurances from President Biden that he won't interfere with that shipment in any way?
So far, all of our indications are that those vaccine doses are going to be arriving in Canada as scheduled during the second quarter. But for more specifics, I'm happy to turn to Minister Anand to talk about the AstraZeneca order of 20 million doses. Anita.
Thank you so much, Prime Minister. Yes, the Prime Minister is exactly right that we are receiving positive indications that we will be on track to receive our 20 million doses from the facility in the United States. Those are the 20 million doses that we have under our bilateral arrangement with AstraZeneca arriving in Q2 and Q3. And in addition, as announced today, we wanted to make sure that Canadians had access to AstraZeneca vaccines as soon as possible. And as a result, we have been negotiating with the Serum Institute of India since August 2020. And those negotiations came to fruition, finalized yesterday, so that we can ensure that the AstraZeneca vaccine being produced by the Serum Institute of India will be arriving in the coming days and weeks. Thanks, Ryan.
Following up, Ryan?
Yeah, sir. You were asked before about returning to normal. From what we've read and what the experts have said, getting most seniors vaccinated should reduce the number of deaths and dramatically reduce the number of hospitalizations. Is that enough in your mind to start returning Canadian society to normal, to start seeing more openings and getting businesses back to normal?
Like you, Ryan, like millions of Canadians and people all around the world, I am reading all sorts of different reports by different experts on, what could happen, what might happen. If you hit this, you could do that. If you do this, we can do that. There are an awful lot of extraordinary experts around the world, giving helpful advice on what next steps we can take and how we take them. Here in Canada, we rely on people like Dr. Tam and the experts and the vaccine task force and the immunity task force. We will continue to follow the best expert advice in terms of what we can do to reopen and get back to normal as quickly as possible without compromising the safety of Canadians.
Thank you. Operator, last question on the phone.
Thank you. Merci. Prochaine question, Marie Vastel, Le Devoir. À vous.
Good afternoon, Mr. Trudeau. My first question is on this vaccination passport. Yesterday, the Minister of Health of Quebec said that Quebec is preparing to go with a health passport, which will help loosen the lockdown. I'm just wondering where your thoughts are at on a vaccination passport. I think it's something people have been talking about for a while now. I think it's important to follow recommendations from experts at every stage. There might be negative consequences if you want benefits but don't have this health passport. But we're going to follow public health advice.
Immunity passports, such is one that has been talked about for a while. There are potential pros and cons that I've heard on various issues surrounding it. Our position as a government is always going to be to rely on the best advice of experts in terms of how we can move forward in ways that both encourage a return to normalcy as much as possible, as quickly as possible, while not putting at risk Canadians' health or other elements in our community. So we'll continue to pay close attention to the recommendations that our experts make in terms of measures like that.
Ensuite, question, Marie?
Follow-up question. With all due respect, that's a fairly vague answer. When we recently asked that question last winter, you rejected the idea of a vaccine passport. You did not support it then. So am I to understand that you are now open to the idea and that it is something under study right now? Next question. What can you tell us about the effectiveness of the AstraZeneca vaccine against the new variants? Some people fear in certain countries that this vaccine is not effective against those variants. What do you say to that? Answer. Well, from the very outset, Marie, we've seen that experts' recommendations evolve and the data evolves. And so we have to keep on listening to public health experts, which is what we are doing. We are following their best advice, regardless of what they are advising us on. With regard to the effectiveness of the AstraZeneca vaccine, I'm happy to let one of our experts take that question, one of our two doctors, or perhaps Minister Hajdu or Minister Anand.
Okay. Say, Dr. Njoo, that.
Go ahead.
Dr. Njoo here. I believe that with the onboarding of the AstraZeneca vaccine, it gives us another tool to use, and it's another tool in our toolbox. And following the approval of Health Canada, the efficacy of this vaccine stands at 62%, but we have to look at the entire profile of each vaccine. Because vaccines, or rather this vaccine here, the AstraZeneca, is easier to administer than Pfizer and Moderna. So this is something we need to take into account. What was your other question? I apologize, I've forgotten what that was. It was with regard to the new variants. Again, we are keeping an eye on the new variants and how other countries are dealing with them. As far as I understand, some companies such as Pfizer, Moderna, and AstraZeneca are doing experiments in their laboratories to assess the efficacy of their vaccines and to see if these will need to be tweaked in order to fight the new variants. So this is something that's happening right now, and we are keeping an eye on what is happening around the world with regard to the new variants. But as far as our experience is concerned here in Canada, we've had very good results so far with the efficacy of the vaccines. We've approved in the groups we have given the vaccines to, for instance, the elderly and long-term care homes.
Ms. Anand will now take questions in the room.
Good afternoon, Mayor Abson from the Canadian Press. Just wondering, in your conversation with the U.S. President this week, or following that, what exactly do you think the United States can do to help secure freedom for Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig?
As we said from the very beginning, this is an issue that is a top priority for us as a country to secure the release of Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig. The United States obviously has a significant role to play, and we will continue to work with them. But because these are processes that are ongoing, I won't comment on the details of it other than, as I've said, to reiterate that the United States is taking their role in this very seriously, and we look forward to working with them on bringing the two Michaels home as soon as possible.
Glenn McGregor, CTV News. Prime Minister, the allegations against Art McDonald are apparently serious enough that he stepped aside as CDS. Wondering, when you appointed him, announced his appointment before Christmas, did you know about any of these allegations? And if you didn't, do you now know about them? And why do you think you weren't informed about them earlier before you selected him?
Let me begin, Glenn, by reiterating that every single person in this country deserves a safe place to work in, free from harassment or intimidation. This is something that is extremely important, and it's something we've taken strides on, both in our government and in the military, but there's always more to do. One of the most important things is that processes be followed every step of the way, and because there is an ongoing review into this situation and we're ensuring that all the steps are properly taken, I won't be commenting specifically on this process at this time, other than to say that the following of all the steps in this to make sure that everyone has a chance to be heard and that people understand how seriously we take all these concerns and issues is important. Je pense que c'est important de souligner d'abord que
I think it's important to point out that no one should be at work and not feel safe, whether they are victims of harassment or intimidation. And that's why we have put in place serious measures as a government and within the armed forces to follow up. Every time, regardless of where it happens, there are allegations that are raised or concerns that are raised. We follow up with due diligence to make sure that everyone has the chance to be heard, because that is a particular situation which is under investigation. I will not comment on the details of that process, except to say that we are making sure that every step is being followed to the letter.
Hi, Prime Minister. Mercedes Stevenson, Global News. My inbox is full of emails from women who have experienced sexual misconduct in the Canadian Armed Forces under your government's watch. And today you're telling us that everyone has the right to a safe workplace, that you're committed to that. But you extended the term of a chief of defense staff who is accused of sexual misconduct and under police investigation. You personally appointed another chief of defense staff who had to step down 6 weeks later due to this. And the only answers we're getting in terms of accountability is that an email was sent to the Privy Council office and that you're committed. What do you say to these women who are wondering whether you're actually serious about this and what steps you're going to take because they're feeling like they're losing trust in the chain of command, that this is systemic at the highest levels of the military, and that your government is not taking action?
I think what we've seen with the current Chief of Defense Staff choosing to step aside because of these allegations demonstrates that the military and that the government takes extremely seriously any allegations of the sort. We have done that. I have personally done that as leader from the very beginning, and we will continue to ensure that everyone who works in the government or in the military or anywhere across the country is heard when they come forward with challenges or allegations or concerns. We have a lot of work to do in our systems, in our workplaces across the country to continue to move forward on making sure that they are safe and free from intimidation and harassment and sexual assault. We have made great strides as a country over the past years, over the past decade, but there is an awful lot more to do. And I think if we can highlight, as we have, that no one is out of reach of concerns and allegations like this, that they will always be taken seriously. And I want to say to anyone who has survived incidents or issues of sexual assault that we will be there to listen, to hear them, to work with them, and to move forward through processes that will get to the right answers. Je pense que ce qu'on a vu au cours des
I believe that what we've seen in the past weeks and what we're hearing now underscores the point that every person who works in this country, who works for the government or the armed forces, has a right to work in a safe environment free of intimidation or harassment. We are always going to take that seriously, and I think we've shown. And what the Chief of Defense Staff has shown when he chose to step aside from his position as the investigation unfolds is that no one is protected against allegations, and these allegations will be taken seriously. We will make sure that every time a person comes forward with concerns or stories, that the matter be addressed and that we follow a rigorous process in a responsible manner, that the person making the allegations be heard and supported, and that at the same time we work even harder to change our systems and our institutions in order to end these stories, which are always concerning.
Prime Minister, just to follow up on that, your government was made aware of these allegations in 2018, 3 years ago. 3 years ago that your government had something you could have done about this. There was no further inquiries made by the defense minister. He apparently didn't tell you based on what we're hearing in question period. You're saying you learned about this from media reports. Isn't there a responsibility in your government to take political action when this kind of an allegation is brought forward? Are you satisfied with how the minister handled this? Because you're saying, you know, you've always taken the appropriate actions, but this was an email and that was it.
There are processes in place that we have put in place, that we have strengthened, that we expect will be followed in every single situation. Every case is different, and the processes are rigorous. And that's why there is a review going on right now to make sure that indeed all the appropriate steps were followed, so that we can ensure that there is accountability if the appropriate steps weren't followed, and to make sure as well that the systems we have in place are adequate, are the right ones. If all the steps were followed and it shows that the system isn't strong enough, well, we will strengthen that system. We know that these problems have been going on for many, many years in many systems and institutions, and we need to change them. We have taken significant steps, but as has been highlighted, there's always more to do, and we will continue to do more to support survivors, to support people who come forward.
Merci. Prochaine question dans la salle.
Next question from the room. With AstraZeneca, which is effective only up to 62%, and the other vaccines' efficacy at 81%, the ones that have already been approved, are you afraid that Canadians will begin vaccine shopping, or whether they'll refuse to take AstraZeneca, as has happened in other countries? Answer. First of all, it's good news that we have access to several vaccines, and our expert panel, which advises on how and where to use these vaccines, will keep on doing its work and will present more options with regard to these different types of vaccines. So that's great news. And we know that being vaccinated by a vaccine certified by Health Canada is always better than not getting a vaccine. And we hope that we will be getting vaccines into the arms of as many Canadians as possible, as quickly as possible, because as soon as enough Canadians have been vaccinated, regardless of which vaccine is used, we will be able to go back to life as normal.
Prime Minister Tom Perry from CBC. I'd like to go back to this week's vote on declaring the genocide in China. Why did you and your cabinet decide to sit out that vote? Also, I'd like to ask you on the definition of genocide. You've said you want to dot the I's, cross the T's before you say whether China's committing genocide. But when the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls report came out, you accepted its findings that Canada was committing genocide. So why are you ready to accept that Canada is committing genocide and not China?
On your first question, Tom, I think it's really important that parliamentarians can speak out and can highlight concerns that they have and concerns that they've heard and represent the voices of their constituents. And that's why it was important that that Parliament was able to have a vote on this. But a government has a responsibility that goes beyond a legislative assembly, and we need to make sure that we are moving forward appropriately and actually following up with the kinds of actions that are going to put an end to human rights abuses. And that means working with our allies. That means, as I did last Friday, bringing it up with the G7 and having a discussion about how we can move forward in a concerted fashion to make determinations and to ensure the appropriate international bodies weigh in, and then to move forward on sanctions and consequences in a coordinated way. That's the responsibility that a government has, and that's one that we take very, very seriously. In regards to the question of the report on missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, we had an expert panel that we commissioned, an inquiry, that national public inquiry that we had long promised, that we delivered on over the past years, that looked into this situation, that heard from testimony from thousands of Canadians, of families, really dug into the issue with full access across the country to what was going on and came to a determination. And that's very much what we want to see in the international community. We want to see investigative bodies able to look into this and make a determination, because it is not a situation to be taken lightly. We have, for the past many years, been highlighting our real and deep concerns about the human rights situation in Xinjiang with the Uyghurs and with the treatment of ethnic minorities in China, including directly to the Chinese government. And we will continue to highlight those concerns while we work with the international community on charting the right path forward.
Thank you, Prime Minister. C'est le tout du temps que vous avez avec nous aujourd'hui.
Thank you, Prime Minister. That's all the time you have with us here today.
Je pense que tout d'abord,
I think that, first of all, it's important for a legislative assembly that MPPs be able to speak about such a serious issue as the Uyghur situations. it's extremely important for Parliament to be able to express itself on that issue. But as a government, we have additional responsibilities to act, to coordinate with our allies, to ensure that measures and relationships and responses be found in the right way with the international community. And that is why I continue to speak. I spoke with our G7 colleagues last Friday in order to work together to coordinate both our issues, our questions, and our responses. Emerging issues and existing issues that we need to move forward on. With respect to the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, the inquiry that we launched in 2015 had been sought for, that lasted for years, that went across the country, that looked at all the necessary facts to draw their conclusions to see how we could bring this situation to an end and recognize the victims and their families. It's something that we want to see in Xinjiang. We need reports, investigations, independent investigators to determine what it is that's going on and what the next steps are that must be taken. And we take our responsibility extremely seriously when it comes to emphasizing human rights, even directly with the Chinese government. And we will continue to be firm in our convictions that we need to find answers and find the necessary measures and actions to bring these abuses to an end. Thank you, Prime Minister. We will now take some questions on the phone for operator. Please go ahead.
The next question, Marika Walsh, The Globe and Mail. Line open. Ms. Walsh?